And of course, the Torah is way more than a novel in so many ways. But if the Torah was a novel, then I think that the main plot of the Torah is in Parshat Shemot, is in Sefer Shemot. Sefer Shemot, the biggest theme comes out of the whole Torah. And that big theme basically is you have the revelation of the Jewish nation. You have the revelation of the Jewish nation, the coming out, the bringing into the Jewish nation, and the receiving of the Torah as well, and as part of that process. Sefer Bereshit is more like the introduction to the Torah. Sefer Bereshit is setting up the context, is giving us the underpinnings of Emunah that we need to understand what's going to happen next. And it's describing the lives of individuals and how these great individuals, they came to understand what the purpose of life is, essentially. And they moved towards their personal perfection in amazing ways. And they became a precedent for what was going to be later. But the main event of the Torah is when you have a Jewish nation. That's when it really starts to come out, you know. Okay. You know, when I was young, we used to watch this movie once a year, The Wizard of Oz. I don't know if you guys saw that movie. It's a movie about this Kansas, you know, and then when it's everything's in black and white. But then when they get to the Wizard of Oz, to the land of Oz, it turns into color, you know. So that's when you're in the. So I think when we get to Sefer Shemot, then it turns into color, sort of like that. So anyway, the Avot were these individuals that sort of saw through the illusion of the world. They were the beginnings that made the kesher with Hashem Yisbarach, with the relationship. They laid the foundations for the Jewish people. They made the family, the Bnei Yaakov. They were the first family that was also family serving Hashem, and you know, as a precedent for what we have now. But later, that set up the possibility for the Jewish nation, which is happening in Sefer Shemot. The Rabbi Yehuda explains that there's really three main events in Sefer Shemot. And these are how the Jewish people came into being. You know, after the laying of the ground through the Avot, then the actual unfolding of the Jewish nation happened through three processes. The first one was Yetzias Mitzrayim, going out of Egypt. The second one was Matan Torah, and receiving the Torah. And the third one was the Mishkan and the Hashrat HaShechina, the indwelling of the divine presence among the Jewish people. So those three events together, that's what makes up the essence of Sefer Shemot, and that's what brings out. That's how the Jewish people came out into the full-fledged nation that we have now. So look here in number 14 in the sheets we have. So it starts out with V'shechanti b'tocham. So it's talking about the Mishkan. So he says like this, Rabbi Yehuda, Megiyim lamaskana b'truma titzava. We arrive at the conclusion of the events of Sefer Shemot in the parasha of Truma Titzava. It's that final development of the coming out of Klal Yisrael. Vasuli mikdash v'shechanti b'tocham. They will make for me a mikdash, and I will dwell among them. Zot apam rishona shanu nifkashim b'musag shel shechina. This is the first time we talked about the Shechina, the dwelling of Hashem's presence in this world. Hamashlim et hashlishia hamekudeshet. This is the conclusion of the three-part event: Yetziat Mitzrayim, Mamad Har Sinai, Matan Torah, going out of Egypt, the receiving of the Torah, and V'shechanti b'tocham, and then the dwelling of the Shechina among us when we made the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Ulam yesh chiluk b'neihem. However, there is a difference between those three events. Yetziat Mitzrayim u'matan Torah hem uvdot historiot. Going out of Egypt and the receiving of the Torah, these are historical events. Shetafsu chelik mesuyam shel zman. They took a certain amount of time. They happened within time. Klomar shenimshechu perek zman mesuyam. They took place in time, and they transpired over a period of time. Masha'en kein v'shechanti b'tocham, which is not the case of I dwelt within them. Hu maskana shel shnei hadvarim hakodmim. This is the outcome, the conclusion of the two things that came before. The going out of Egypt and the receiving of the Torah, they concluded in, and I dwelt among them. When we built the Mishkan, and we set the whole Mishkan up with all the preparations and all the avodah that we had to make the Mishkan, it was just made perfectly, and they brought the korbanot, they got it all set up. Then what happened is, the divine presence came down into the Mishkan. And it says, and I dwelt among them. And it doesn't say I dwelt in the Mishkan, it says I dwelt among them, among the Jewish people. So he says, these first two events, the event of going out of Egypt, where we were like born as a nation, beginning, the first step of coming into a nation came about, and the second step was to receive the Torah. Those two things were historical events that happened in a certain period of time frame, which is not the case by V'shechanti b'tocham, which when the Shekhinah, the divine presence, came down among us, that was not like that. Hu maskana shel shnei devarim hakodmim. That's the conclusion of the two things. Because we came out of Egypt with miracles and we were now an independent nation like we were, that was the first step. The second step, we received the Torah. The third step, the result of those two things was there was now the coming down of the divine presence. Hakayemet la'ad u'netzek nitzachim. And that stays with us forever. That never changed. That's the difference. Once the divine presence came down and there was the Shekhinah dwelling among the Jewish people, then that stayed. It wasn't just a historical event that happened at a certain period of time. That is now forever. The divine presence is among the Jewish people. That was set up by the first two processes. We were becoming a nation capable of receiving the divine presence among us through Yetzias Mitzrayim and Matan Torah. Now when we made the Mishkan and the divine presence came down, now that became the reality of the Jewish people forever. That we have the divine presence among us, the Shekhinah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu shochein b'toch Knesset Yisrael. Hashem dwells among the gathering of Israel. Hashchina hi klal Yisrael, the divine presence, that is Israel, the Jewish nation as a whole. Hi anachnu, that is us. We are the Shekhinah. That's what he's saying. The divine presence is the nation. Hi klal u'umah, that's the nation as a whole. Nishmat u'umah, or another way you say it, you can say it's the soul of the nation. The soul of the nation is the divine presence. Number 3, also let me go a little further. Shekhinah b'Yisrael. What's the Shekhinah? This divine presence. Hametziut shel hashrat Shekhinah b'Yisrael, he l'kol dorot. The existence of the dwelling of the Shekhinah, the divine presence among Yisrael, is for all the generations. Kedivri Shlomo Melech, as Shlomo Melech said, "V'shechanti b'toch b'nei Yisrael, I dwelt among the Jewish people. V'lo azov et amid olam, I will never abandon them." So the Jewish presence is always with us from then on. Shekhinah v'klal Yisrael. Hinam davar chad. The Shekhinah, the divine presence, and the Jewish, the collective of Klal Yisrael is one thing. Shekhinah ze Klal Yisrael. Kudash Baruch u'Shechintei. When we talk about the Kadosh Baruch Hu and his Shekhinah should be united, that's ze Kudash Baruch Hu u'Knesset Yisrael, and the soul of the Jewish nation. So there's this uniting of the Jewish nation, the collective Jewish nation, our soul, our essence, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu's influence. So that's called Kudash Baruch Hu U'Shechintei. Hashchina Shora B'toch Levavot B'nei Yisrael. What is this Shechina? It's not a thing. It doesn't have any physicality. What is it? It's something that dwells within the hearts of the Jewish people. Ki bituyim shel HaChasidim, as the Chasidim say. Hi ha'chelek shel Klal Yisrael haganuz b'pnimiyot kol Adam Yisrael. So every person has an element of the divine presence of the whole that's carried by the whole inside him. So each one of us is now part of that national soul. There's like a national soul. That's also called the divine presence. It's really lofty type of expression. And each person has a little bit of that inside him. So in other words, Everybody has a soul. Everybody, all the people in the world have a type of a neshama and a soul, but ours is special. Ours is different because it's a national soul, which each one of our individuals is connected to that, is an element of that. So, okay, so that's the first thing that I wanted to bring from Rabbi Yehuda. I want to tell you some thoughts about it I had, examples where you see this. There's a Gemara that says that whoever walks in Eretz Yisrael, Arba Amot, 4 cubits, Harizeh ben Olam Haba. He's the son of the next world. So that's an amazing idea. Like, he's the son of the next world. First of all, when it says the son of the next world, it doesn't mean he's going to go to the next world, because you never know. He might do chas v'shalom, he might do a lot of bad things. He's not necessarily guaranteed the next world. But at that moment, he's called the son of the next world. He's connected to the next world. That's what it means, the ben Olam Haba. That's what Mefarshim say. And how does he become a ben Olam Haba? He's in a transcendent state. He's connected to the next world. How does he do that? By walking 4 amot in Eretz Yisrael. So how is that logical? You walk across the room and you're a ben Olam Haba? Why? You know? So, but I think the answer is that when you step foot on Eretz Yisrael, and for some reason when you walk 4 amos on it, I don't know why that is exactly 4 amos, but you step in Eretz Yisrael, you're in Eretz Yisrael, you're walking around Eretz Yisrael, you become aware that you're part of the collective. You're part of the Jewish nation. From the beginning of Avram Avinu coming here until now. This is our place, this is our home, it transcends time. And, you know, it doesn't transcend space, it's connected with space, it's connected to this place called Eretz Yisrael. But when you step in Eretz Yisrael and you walk Arba Amot, you're now connecting in your awareness, in your consciousness, in your soul, to the whole Jewish nation as a whole. As you connect to the Jewish nation as a whole, so then you're called a Ben Olam Haba. You're being elevated above this world in some way. That's the Shekhinah, the divine presence. You're connected with the divine presence. It also says Eretz Yisrael is machkim. There's something about the avira to Eretz Yisrael. The air of Eretz Yisrael brings wisdom to people. You know. Now the air of everyone brings wisdom. If you go to the Alps and you look out and you see the beauty of nature, you see something that's also brings you wisdom. You see Hashem's wonders. You see the beauty of nature. You know that Hashem made. But Eretz Yisrael is something more. There's this connection to Klal Yisrael, and that brings out a deeper wisdom, a different kind of wisdom. I had another thought also I want to share about this. Going to another element here I want to share. A thought I had about, there's a parsha, it's in Kisisa, when the Jewish people do Chet HaEgel. We do the sin of the golden calf. And it's a really bad sin, and a lot of people did it in various levels. They did it for Zorah right after they received the Torah. And Hashem was really disappointed with the Jewish people and really upset at them. And Moshe came to Davin, and Hashem said, listen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase the Jewish people because they messed up, and I'll rebuild them with you, Moshe. We'll have a new Jewish people, we'll start with you again. So Moshe Rabbeinu says back to them, he says, Im Kain, if you do that, Mecheni na misifrecha. I want you to erase me from your book. Erase me from the Torah. I don't want to be part of the whole thing. I'm out of here. If you make me the head of the Jewish people, I don't want any part of it. I don't want to be in the Sefer Torah. I don't want to be mentioned anymore. I want to go anonymous. I want to duck out of it. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want it. Why didn't he want it? What's the problem? Hashem is always doing the right thing. Hashem knows what he's doing. Hashem wanted to remake the Jewish people for Moshe. If something doesn't work, you try something else. So that's what Hashem wanted to do. Moshe said, no, I'm not doing that. And in the sages, they had say a mashal also. They say, Moshe said to him, listen, if you have a 3-legged stool and it doesn't stand, which is the Jewish nation based on the 3 avot, now you're going to make it again with a 1-legged stool and that is going to stand? So Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want to go there. He didn't say, I don't want this. I don't want to be the new foundation, the new avot of Am Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu. I want it to be the old way. It comes from the avot, and with all their sins, Hashem, you have to take them back. You have to forgive them. So Hashem said, okay, you're right. That's what I wanted you to say. And that's what happened. So then the Jewish nation survived. So it's a little bit hard to understand, what does he mean, Moshe? Because people ask the kasha, famous kasha. What is Moshe Rabbeinu asking? He said, I don't want to be a one-legged stool. That doesn't stand. I want the three-legged stool from the Avot. The problem is Moshe Rabbeinu was also from the Avot. So it would have been still from the Avot. What's the difference? It's a famous kasha, that. So I think the answer is, my idea is that the difference is that if it had been from Moshe, it would have been elite. It would have been the elite. It would have been the Moshe's children and Moshe's family, and that would have developed the Klal Yisrael. It would have been only the top. The Jewish nation would have been Harvard, and everyone else irrelevant. And Moshe didn't want that. He knew that that's not what really Hashem really wanted. Hashem wanted the Jewish nation to be the whole gamut, the whole mixture of every type of person descended from the Avot. The whole mixture of us. That's the real Jewish nation. That's the real intention. If Hashem had done this, it just made it just the elite from Moshe, that would have been a big compromising of Hashem's goal. He wanted to be the whole Jewish nation. Rabbi Yehuda brings this, and he brings it from the Chidah. This following drush I want to tell you also. And I saw it actually in It's Rabbi Nachman, I think it's before the Chidah. I saw it there, and I think it maybe goes before him also. They say like this, the word tzibur means the group, the Klal Yisrael, tzibur. So the tzibur is Rashi Tevot. The first letters are, tzibur means tzadikim, the second letter is beit, beinonim, and the third letter is reish, rishoyim. So tzibur is, I've heard this before, I see, this tzibur is made of three types of people. The tzadikim, the highest tzadikim, the beinonim, the middle people, and the evil people. That's Klal Yisrael. That's what Hashem wants. He wants us all to be together, working together. Everyone helps everyone out. If there's rishoyim, so everyone has to help them and bring them in, and they lift up the whole group as they climb up, And the tzaddikim and everyone it's all one unit. That's what Hashem wants. It's mystical a little bit. That's what Hashem wants. He doesn't want a little set of tzaddikim that are going to be the main thing. He wants Klal Yisrael as it is, with all different levels. So that's the tzibur where the Shekhinah is. In other words, each person, even the guy that he's like in this Rishoyim category, the Shekhinah is with him too. That little element of Shekhinah that's inside him too. That's what the Jewish people are. It's all there. And they all have to become tzaddikim. But meanwhile, it contains all of them. So that's the idea here, that what came into being during this period of time, and being was Klal Yisrael, this tzibur. That we came out of Egypt, we had these experiences, we got the Torah, and then we got the Mishkan, and down came into us the Shekhinah, and that's the completion of Klal Yisrael. From then on, all Jewish people have this national soul, which we're calling the Shekhinah, the divine presence. There's something unique about the Jewish people, something particularly, connected to its source. I'll just tell you, so as we're talking about this thing of tzibur, they say there's a word from Chassidim. They say, the tzibur contains three different types of people: tzaddikim, beinonim, and rishoyim. So in the Chassidic world, they say there's one sefer for each one. The Noam Elimelech, that's the sefer of tzaddikim. Very hard sefer, very lofty, kabbalistic sefer. It's for the tzaddikim, And then the middle sefer is Tanya. It's for beinonim, for the middle level. And then the sefer for rishoyim is Likutei Moharan, is Rabbi Nachman. Because Rabbi Nachman goes and he loves the Rishoyim, He says, the people on the lowest level, they're great. They could do it. They could do it. They can get up above all their falling, all their difficulties. They can go from level to level, and this is how you do it. And Rabbi Nachman, gives them all this chizuk and hadracha. So anyway, so that's who we are. We're all these three types.
What was the first one?
The tzaddikim. Then Noam Elimelech, Rabbi Elimelech Milozhinsk. He was one of the greatest Rebbes. He was a student of the Medrash Maggid, and most of the Rebbes after him were his Talmidim. He was this Ish Kadosh Ma'od. He was very, very exceptional. Anyway, so his sefer is called the Sefer of Tzaddikim in this fort here.
And his name is Rabbi
Elimelech Milozhinsk.
Elimelech.
Yeah. So, okay. So now let's go look back into our text here. Now look at this. Now here's another very interesting element. Now he points out, I think I'm going to say it outside. Maybe I won't go through the whole thing inside. I want to give time for you guys to talk also, to feedback. So this piece number 8 over here what Yehuda says is he points out that when we get into Parshas Bo, that's when we leave Mitzrayim and we're starting to become the nation. And then in the end of Parshas Bo, you hit Korban Pesach. You hit first HaChodesh Hazeh Lechem, Rosh Chodesh, making the Chodesh by the Beis Din, and then you hit Korban Pesach. And wow, it's amazing what happens then. Till then it was all stories, you know? The whole Torah was stories. Whole Bereshit was a bunch of stories, and then the beginning of Shemot, a bunch of stories. All of a sudden it switches. What happens now? It's halachas. It's a Jewish law. I don't think there's any bigger parsha of law than Korban Pesach. It's gigantic. So many halachas and so many details. And the Torah goes into detail about them. Very fascinating and very deep. And why does that happen at that point? So Rabbi Yehuda points out the reason why you have all the laws of Chodesh Hazeh Lechem and Korban Pesach is now that we're a nation, now we're ready to receive the mitzvahs. That's becoming the completing of the nation. We're getting those mitzvahs. And only now are we really ready to receive the mitzvahs. The mitzvot are made for the nation. We're receiving them as a nation, as a group. This national soul receives the mitzvahs and does the mitzvahs as a national soul. Even though individuals do the mitzvahs, they're not doing it as an individual anymore. They're doing it as part of Klal Yisrael. And that's like the big picture. That's where we're trying to go the whole time. So that's why Rashi says in the beginning of Bereshit, Rashi says, Bereshit bara Elokim es hashamayim v'es haaretz. Rashi says, why didn't you start from there? The Torah could have started at HaChodesh Hazeh Lechem, at Rosh Chodesh. So Rabbi Yehuda, everyone talks about what's Gemara's question exactly. So Rabbi Yehuda is saying, because that's the real beginning of the Torah. The point of the Torah is to make an Am Yisrael. There should be an Am Yisrael, and they should receive the mitzvot, and that's how they bring themselves out and express themselves fully. So the meeting of Am Yisrael with the mitzvot, that's the perfection of the Jewish nation, and the perfection of the world really is coming out at that point through the mitzvot. So that was the kash. The kash is why you could have skipped the whole Bereshit. Just start from there, because that's the main thing. So then he says the answer, which is a little bit difficult to answer over there, Rashi. So putting that on the side, but in a certain sense, this is where the Torah really starts, from the nation forming and starting to receive the mitzvahs as a nation. He says that when we had mitzvahs before, the mitzvot of Brit Milah, the mitzvot of Gid Nasheh, so those were given to individuals. So that's not the same mitzvah we do now. If we didn't have it said again at Sinai, then we wouldn't be doing it. You know, Brit Milah and Pir Verivia and Gid Nasheh, those are, when they're given again, that's what we're following. We're following it that it came back in Torah. That's our mitzvah now. We're not doing the mitzvah the Avot did. That was for individuals. The mitzvah we're doing now, we're doing mitzvah now as a group, with our group soul. It's a much higher level. So you see, that's why when we say Birkat Torah, we say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher b'korbanim mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. He chose us from all the nations, and he gave us his Torah. It doesn't say he gave us his Torah and chose us as the ones to receive the Torah. It says the first thing is there's a nation, because the nation is the condition for the receiving of the Torah. We are very excited about being this particular type of nation which is capable of receiving the Torah and the mitzvahs of the Torah. So we stay every day, Asher b'korbanim mikol ha'amim. We're part of this chosenness, that we are the vessel to bring down the Torah. If not for Yisrael, there'd be no Torah. If not for Torah, there'd be no Israel either. The Torah is what brings us out, brings out our potential to its fullness, to its actuality. But the fact there was first the formation of the Jewish people, before there was a Torah. And when it was formed, then the Torah comes down in its full sense. So the Jewish nation is something very gigantic. It says here on the bottom, it says, if you look at 35, it says here, Amar Eliyahu, Pamachad hayiti over makom lamakom. Balafani adam echad v'hayasholani b'divrei Torah. Eliyahu says, I was traveling and a guy came and started talking to me about Torah. Amar li Rebbe, Shnei devarim yeshli b'levavi, v'nuavam ava gadola. There are two things in my heart and I love them with great love. Torah v'Yisrael. Aval eni yodea eze mehen kodem. I don't know which one is first. Amarti lo, Eliyahu says, I said to him, Darkan shel b'nei Adam she'omrim Torah kodemet l'kol. People say that the Torah is the main thing. Aval ani hayiti omer Yisrael kadoshim kodmi. But I would say that Yisrael is the main thing. They come first. So this is a very deep subject. He says that Israel is before the Torah. Without Israel, they're the Kli that was made. We were made like not by accident, not by history, with divine providence, he formed us into a nation through Yetzias Mitzrayim and Kabbalah Satorah and the Hashras Hashkin and the Mishkan. So Mamela, it turns out that the Jewish people are great like the Torah, maybe greater than the Torah in certain ways. In certain ways, that's the case. He also brings in this note. I'll just tell you what he said. Also, a very interesting thing in this note here. He brings from something about Shamshon Raphael Hirsch. Very interesting story from Shamshon Raphael Hirsch. He says that there was Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, which is approach to the Torah, and there were people against him. There were people arguing with him. So it seems like they said, this is, he brings a Kitzer over here, they said that the Jewish nation is first. And he said that Torah is first. So Reb Tzvi Yehuda explains that what happened there was these people coming against him, they were not believers in the Torah. They believed that the Torah is a product of the Jewish nation, like other nations have their own folklore or their own literature. So they thought that the Torah is the literature of the Jewish nation. So Rav Shimshon before Hirsch said, no, that's what happened. The Torah formed us. The Torah is bigger than us. So Reb Tzvi Yehuda points out that he was partly right, but they were also partly right, not because of what they were saying, but in a certain sense, the nation is bigger than the Torah, because the nation came in this miraculous way to this vessel which contains the divine presence in it, carries the Shekhinah with it, and that's what made it that we could have a Torah. We could receive the Torah to the world. So he's taking the side of the misnagdim of Rav Hirsch, not because of what they meant. He's saying it a different way. There's another angle. In some ways the Torah is higher, but in some ways the nation's higher. But not like that Pikorsim say, that the Torah is just literature. No. Other way around. It's higher because it's the vehicle for bringing Torah down into the world. And okay. So now look at number 9. Not true. Now here's an amazing thing he says. Listen to this. He's talking about Christianity. What happens when you take the holiness of the group and you put it on an individual? Which is what the Christians did. The Christians said, no, the Jewish people are not holy. This one guy is holy. This is where the holiness is. Zu avodah zarah, that's idol worship, he says. That's idol worship. Kedvarav haberurim shel Rambam, as the Rambam says, which was censored. Shehanatzrut hi avodah zarah. The Rambam Paskins, he says, that Christianity is avodah zarah. That's a debate among poskim, but he says the Rambam comes out that way. Even though it was censored, that's what he said. That avodah zarah, that Christianity is avodah zarah. Havart musagim sheshayachim lebore el nivra hi avodah zarah. If you transfer the concept which applies to Hashem and you put it on a person, that's idol worship. You're worshiping a person. You can't do that. That's wrong. Kagon im mishtachavim lepesel v'toch yachas eloki Allah. For example, you bow down to a statue and you hold that it has divinity in it. You know, that's divine. You've bowed down to it. That's avodah zarah. You're transferring the divine reality into something specific. They can't do that. Ve'naf kamina im nivrahu pesel. It doesn't matter if it's a statue, chama levana, sun or a moon, or ben adam, or if it's a person. If you take the divine reality and you say that's inside a person, so that's avodah zarah. That's wrong. That's Christianity messed up big time. That's wrong. Havar zu shel el adam yechide hi avodah zarah. You bring Hashem into an individual, that's avodah zarah. No way. But listen to what he says. Masha ein kain b'yachas hatzibur. However, if you're talking about the Jewish nation, then it is true. In other words, the divine presence is in the Jewish nation. So that's wild. He's saying something so amazing. He's saying that, in other words, the Jewish people, even though we don't bow down to the Jewish people, that's true, but we do serve them. We serve the Jewish people because the Jewish people are the carriers of the divine presence. It's an amazing thing. It's a different thing. We don't serve any individual. No way. You serve an individual as if you're serving Hashem. That's not true. But when you're serving the Jewish nation, you are serving Hashem. That's correct. And in fact, it's something to think about in our daily lives. Like when we are, let's say we're learning Torah, right? So we're not only developing ourselves and our understanding and our character, we're doing all that, yes. But we're also serving the Jewish people. We're building the Jewish people. I bring my own understanding of the Torah into the world. The Jewish nation is being strengthened and expanded. Now they have my particular angle, which no one else has. And let's say I do chesed. Let's say I do chesed with my roommate. Chesed with my shiur companion, my chavruta. I do something nice to them. I'm friendly to them. I help them with something. So you're doing chesed with a friend. You're also doing the chesed with Klal Yisrael. It's a different thing. It's you're plugging into the Jewish nation. Let's say a person has gotten in trouble. A person is in a bad place. So, yeah, he made mistakes, but he's not out of Klal Yisrael. He's still in Klal. He's in the grid. He can immediately plug back into Klal Yisrael. He can go to Minyan after he did the worst of error. He can realize that he's still part of Klal Yisrael. He's not gone at all, because the existence of the Jewish nation, there's a divine reality to it. There's a nishmat Yisrael, and every Jew is part of that always, and so that's something completely unique. Now, I learned something recently myself in this area, that when I go to daven Shachrit in the morning, that's one of my best times. I like Shachrit a lot. It's my favorite thing. I have coffee first. I get up early. I really enjoy Shachrit, And usually I have an idea what it's saying. The words, they make sense to me somewhat, I enjoy reading. I enjoy saying the tefillah in the morning because my mind is pretty clear. And by the time I finish the whole day, I go through did my learning, I did all my things, and I'm going to Arvit already. So I find it much harder to relate to the words, and to put myself into them in a really clear way and to feel it. Like when they say Avat Olam, Avtanu Hashem Elokim, Torah, Mitzvot, Chukim Mishpatim, Osanu Midatah, Alken B'Shachmein V'Chomein Nasik B'Chukecha V'Nismach B'Divrei Salmut Torah. It's very hard for me to get into that 100% like I do in the morning, I feel like, okay, I learned already, I'm tired now, I just want to go home and have dinner, I want to relax, I want to hang out a little bit, I'm not like feeling my love for Torah at that moment, And then I learned, as we learned Masechta Brachot, I realized that I'm not only talking about myself, as I praise Hashem for giving me the Torah, and I'm not only praising Hashem because of my individual benefit, I'm praising Hashem as a representative of the whole Jewish nation. So I started to shift my focus as I say Arvit. I'm speaking for Klal Yisrael. Hashem, you gave us Torah and mitzvot. It's in the plural, right? You gave Torah and mitzvot. Therefore, we will learn your Torah day and night. And I feel much better. I feel, okay, even if I'm not getting as much of a personal connection as I do in the morning, I'm connecting as a part of Klal Yisrael. And that's why it's said in the plural, because all of our tefillahs we're supposed to be thinking those terms. When we say Birkat HaMazon, we say it in plural. Thank you, Hashem, for giving us all of our needs, not just me. Because we're part of this national soul. Okay, so that's basically what I'm going to say today. So I'd be interested to hear any feedback, any questions. Isn't this interesting? This is a very deep subject. Like, what is the Shekhinah, the divine presence? It's the same thing as the Jewish national collective soul, which came down into us when we made a Mishkan. After we prepared ourselves with Tziyas Mitzrayim, we were prepared with Tziyas Mitzrayim and Kabbalas Torah, then we have this collective soul. Yeah.
So I actually have two questions. The first is, in the second Beit HaMikdash, when they was something wrong?
No, go.
Okay. In the second Beit HaMikdash, when the Goyim went in there, the divine presence was not in the second Beit HaMikdash. I've wondered about that. Was it when did the divine presence leave the second Beit HaMikdash?
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's an interesting subject you're asking now. There are all different concepts of Shekhinah, all different levels of Shekhinah,
Yeah.
And there was, in the first Beis HaMikdash, there was a very high level of indwelling of the divine presence in the Beis HaMikdash. What that meant was, I'm saying things maybe over my head a little bit, I'm trying to answer as well as I can. When a person went in there, he had an understanding that was much higher than the regular understanding. It doesn't mean if no one was there, I don't know what was happening exactly, so much. I'm not sure about that. But what it means in our relationship with Hashem, it was very much stronger in the Beis HaMikdash than it was outside. So it was a place of Hashem. There were miracles that happened there also. And that has to do with us and our relating with Hashem. So later words, like during the second Beis HaMikdash days, that level of divine presence went out, But there's all levels, so it means that it wasn't the same as it was. See, the Gemara says even when people are learning Torah, there's a divine presence there. So that's not the same level. Even with there's 10, if there's one, even one person, the Imperial Calvinist said the Shekhinah is with him. There's always levels of a divine presence. When it says there's shalom between a husband and a wife, there's divine presence there. There's all different levels of Shekhinah. But they're all, I would say, they're all part of this idea. We talk about the Shekhinah, we're talking about a Jewish thing. We're talking about the collective soul, the experience of the collective soul as much as you do. So you collected that, you experienced that in the Mishkan, you experience in the Jewish home, experience it when you learn Torah, experience that somewhat all the time.
Which leads me to my second question, which is right in line with what you're talking about. That makes more sense what you're describing, the different levels of the Shekhinah.
Yeah.
Can you describe the level of Shekhinah among Kol Yisrael before Mas Aliyah and after Mas Aliyah, and where are things headed?
That's such an interesting question. Wow, that's a good question. So like, let's say right now, is there a new level of collective soul coming back down, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think so. I think there obviously is. I mean, it's very apparent for anybody who looks. We have now a feeling. We have this. We're in Eretz Yisrael, and we have this. This idea of everyone's here is walking Arba Amot in Eretz Yisrael. We're Ben Abolam Haba, and we're here. And there is not only that. There's independence, which we didn't have, which is one of the vehicles for receiving the Shekhinah, the Jewish nation. So yes, I think you're 100% right, and you see it in all kinds of ways. You see that the Torah learning that's going on in Eretz Yisrael now is very, very big. If you go into the shuls, like all around, you see people are writing Sforim every day. Sforim are filling the shuls. They can't even sell them because no one wants to read them necessarily, because there's so many, they're even better Sforim, but people are writing high-level Sforim on every halacha, on every sugya. Like the amount of wisdom and the amount of things that are going on, the chesed that's going on in Eretz Yisrael, and the amount of Jewish pride is fantastic. Now there's a counterforce also, which covers it over. There are people trying the people feel that and are threatened by it, Some of them are Jewish also. But mostly it's the non-Jewish influence which is filtering in, that people haven't got, you really don't know who they are, But I would say, 100%.
What do things need to look like in order for us to be able to build a Beit HaMikdash?
Well, I think that's I think that's Hashem's secret when that's going to happen. We don't know, but maybe I told you the story before. I'll tell you a story on that subject. The story is that the Noam Elimelech, I spoke about it before. He said that every generation has their special mitzvah, right? I think I told you this before, but I'll tell you it again. It's a great story. And they asked him, what's your generation's special mitzvah in that generation? He said it was tzitzit. I think that means that we had to get past the power of illusion, get the clarity, not to go after our eyes and our heart, like it says in tzitzit, right? So that was his generation. Now, more recently, you had Rav Moshe Charlap. He was a student of Rav Kook. So he told over the story, and the students asked him, so what's our mitzvah now in our generation? So he said, our mitzvah now is Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, building Eretz Yisrael, building back the Jewish nation Eretz Yisrael. So I was talking with my son about this, and he was learning by a tzaddik in our times, who just passed away. His name Rav. I forgot his name. He just passed away. So he was a big Talmud of Rabbi Yehuda. I'll get the name hopefully. Rabbi Zuckerman. Yes, thank you, Rabbi Zuckerman. So my son learned by Rabbi Zuckerman. So I was talking to my son about this story, and I said, I wonder what our mitzvah is now. Because we're a long time later from Rav Moshe Charlap. That was like about almost 100 years ago. So what's our mitzvah now? So my son says, let me ask Rabbi Zuckerman. So he went in to ask Rabbi Zuckerman, and Rabbi Zuckerman said, our mitzvah now is Binyan Beis HaMikdash. So the students were astounded. Our mitzvah is Binyan Beis HaMikdash? We should go build a Beis HaMikdash? He says, no, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, like Rav Kook said, that what destroyed our Beis HaMikdash was hate, blind hate. And so now it's going to build the Beis HaMikdash when we get back together, when there's a oneness among the Jewish people, when there's achdut and there's love between us, then that's going to build the Beis HaMikdash. That's going to be the grounds for the Beis HaMikdash to be built again. So I would say that there's a lot to do first. I personally think that's not our biggest concern right now. How and when the Beis HaMikdash will be built, we have a lot to do. We can do it. We can pave the way for it. We can learn Torah. We can learn what Hashem wants from us, and we can build a connection between each other. We can bring down that, like you mentioned, that national soul more and more. So when we're all together.
That's interesting. So today, our big mitzvah, or the Beit HaMikdash, is all about unity among the Jewish people.
That's what Rav Zuckerman said. Yeah. But I think you have to also take that with a deep understanding. It's not, unity comes also from learning Torah and from doing mitzvot and from bringing depth into being able to bring wisdom into ourselves and having it spill over into everyone else,
Makes sense,
and then we'll have unity. Without that, if they don't understand what the Torah is, people don't understand what it is, both and on all levels, they don't understand what we're doing here. So then it's going to be more difficult to have unity. But the more the wisdom of Torah spreads out, then that's part of the process. What I would say, I would add that. Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay, shkoyach.
Thank you.